In this video, we will discuss the TABE Class-E best practices for preparing your students. But first, let's do a short Class-E test overview. First question, which two tests do Wake Tech ESL students take? I think you know the answer. That's writing and, of course, speaking. Next question. What devices will students use to answer questions on the speaking and writing tests? If you're thinking headset, computer, keyboard, you are spot on. But what does this mean for us as teachers? Well, let's give our students time to use the computer lab or to use our laptop cart. Let's use those devices to give students time to use the TABE online tools. As you're making your own assessments and assignments, use Microsoft Forms. On the new C&D forms, how long is each test? Whew, this is a tougher one, I know. The speaking is 25 minutes and the writing is 55 minutes. Again, what does this mean for us as teachers? Well, let's give our students used to taking assessments under timed conditions. So for example, when I'm giving a grammar test, you can see here with Microsoft Forms, I can set a timer just to add that little element, a little bit of stress, so that our students can get used to what that feels like. Even when I have students write me sentences or do an exit ticket online, I still include a timer, as you can see up here on the right side with the blue arrow. So we know the timing on the test, but how many items? Whew, tough one. Yeah, I know this is a tough one, but you got it. It's 21 items, except of course level 4 has 20. And for writing, it is 28 items. So yes, we need to be teaching our students time management strategies, which is useful for all test taking. We need to teach them that they should not spend too much time on any one question. We need to train them that if it takes too long to answer a question, skip it and return to it later if time allows. Tips like this can be found on this class kick, which you can find in our online resources. And these test taking tips are actually from the test maker. And we have vocabulary for you to teach your students. We have an article for them to answer questions and an opportunity for them to brainstorm different ways that they can do well on tests. Next question. What NRS levels correspond with the level 2 TABE Class-E test? Ooh, this gets difficult, right? Because there's 4 levels of TABE, 6 levels of NRS, but the correct answer is NRS levels 2 and 3. Well, hey, good job. I know you all did fantastic. Let's look at our agenda today. Our test overview, we just did that. We're going to move into test taking tips, which is the majority of this video. We have some writing essentials. And where do you start with all this if you haven't already? About this session, I do want to let you know that I'm not an expert on the TABE Class-E test, but I do have experience in test taking strategies. I'm sharing some best practices that work for me. Please adapt these to best meet the needs of your students. And listen, I only have access to the sample materials that the DRC, the test maker, provides. I have never taken the test, and I'm not involved in scoring or test administration. I say all this because it is important for all of us to do our homework and some due diligence with the resources that have been given to us. All right, let's tackle the speaking. This is the test where a lot of our students are struggling, primarily because of the format of the test. Our students aren't used to it. All the materials that I'm sharing with you today are samples. They're examples from other larger materials that we have created for our teachers. Turnkey materials that hopefully all you have to do is display on your screen and teach your students. These are all contained in a team called the TABE CLAS-E Teacher Resources. If you need to be added to that, no problem. Talk to your supervisor. So, different types of questions on the speaking test. We're going to be focusing on the first four that I have here in blue. So where do these questions come from? Well, we took some from the TABE practice site forms A and B, which was the test that we started with at Wake Tech. Recently, we've switched over to the C and D forms, but there's also a TABE practice site. Now, please know that those changes are mostly related to updating images and removing outdated material. We also have used the DRC TABE Teachers Resource Guide Volume 1, which you have access to. And then we have additional questions that we have created ourselves based on the materials that we have. Now, speaking of C and D, if you want to learn more about the C and D, we have posted a blueprint overview from the test maker on the TABE CLAS-E Teacher Resources team. All right, so we got some test taking tips for you that we're going to move into next. But above all, teach the curriculum, make sure your lessons are contextualized to the workplace, and you'll be able to incorporate so much of what I'm going to be showing you today. All right, so take a look at this picture right here. When students see a picture for a class activity, how do you think most students, especially lower levels, will try to answer? How do we expect them to answer? Typically, it's to describe it, right? They start saying things like, oh, there's a woman, there's a man, she's holding a tray, he's asking a question. And that's fantastic. But earlier, I showed you some different types of questions, and this one is not a describe it. Let's listen.
Look at picture B. You asked for a cup of hot soup, but the soup you got was cold. What do you say to the woman?
What do you say to the woman? So what do students really need to do? Not describe it, but role play it, right? Imagine or pretend that you're one of these people in the pictures, right? You asked for a cup of hot soup. What do you say to the woman? So this leads us to our test taking tip number 1. Tell your students, be ready to role play. You might be role playing as an employee, a customer, a doctor, a patient. You can see some of the examples here in the pictures presented. Test taking tip number 2 is listen and look. We need to train our students, 1, listen carefully to the directions and know who you are in the situation, right? Are you the doctor? Are you the patient? Are you the server? Are you the customer? And look at the picture. Look for who and where. So typically, I will just show my students the picture, but then I tell them I have some tips for you, some advice for you from your teacher. And I show them this listen and look and tell them while they're listening, you need to know who you are. Answer that question of who you are and what do you need to say. And look at that picture. And if this is the first time you're teaching a TABE speaking question, pause here and ask the students, where are they? That's right, a restaurant. Who do you see? A server, a customer. So now let's listen with that in mind. And I would play this again for the students. And you can tell your students to be ready to tell their partner what they would say or put their answer in the chat if you're teaching an online class and don't have time for breakout rooms at that moment. But then after we share some ideas, some sentences from the students, I would show them some common answers that our students give. For example, what do you say to the woman? Some of our students will say, can I get you another soup? That's not correct. Or how can I help you? That's not correct. But here in the yellow, excuse me, my soup is cold is correct. So depending on the level of your students, ask them, why are these responses incorrect? Well, it goes back to the role play. You ask for a cup of soup. What do you say to the woman? And I ask my students, are you the employee? No, you are not the employee, right? You are the customer. You need to answer like you're the customer. Can I get you another soup? That's what the server says. But you ask for the cup of soup. What do you say to the woman? You say, excuse me, my soup is cold. Now, of course, there's other answers that we can use here. And again, this is where you get from the students their ideas. Now, clearly, you can see workforce, workplace contextualization jumping out at you, right? This is identifying jobs. This is resolving problems and is a workforce skill. Speaking of workplace contextualization, here we see another one. Now, remember our strategy. What was that strategy again? And I tell my students that, right? I say, what was that strategy? Trying to scaffold it for them, but not make it too easy, depending on the level of the students. Yes, it's the listen and it's the look. Absolutely. And what do you listen for? And the students tell me who you are.
Look at picture A. This is you. You want to introduce your friend Greg to Marcy, who works with you. What do you say?
So, what do you need to say, right? Sounds like some kind of introduction. Where are they? I asked the students that. Who do you see in the picture? This can get confusing even for our more advanced students. Let's listen again.
Look at picture A. This is you. You want to introduce your friend Greg to Marcy, who works with you. What do you say?
Are you Greg, class? No. Are you Marcy? No. Right? You're the woman where? In the middle. Absolutely. And then again, tell your students, be ready to tell your partner your answer. And play it a third time if they need it. This is practice and can easily be turned into a think, pair, share, or chat activity. Again, show the students some incorrect answers, show them some correct ones, and ask them, why are those first two incorrect? Walk them through it, right? The instructions did not ask you to describe the situation. Nice to meet you, Marcy. That's something that Greg says. You're not Greg, right? You are the woman in the middle. Now remember, all of this extra, these little arrows, the blue transcript, the yellow. This is what I've added to the slide to help you teach, right? To help you teach. And of course, ask the students to give some other ideas. You can give feedback. This can quickly allow you to see where there's some grammar gaps or some usage gaps too with your students. And again, workplace skill, right? Identifying jobs and duties, talking about the cultural appropriateness of socializing with friends at work. So many things you can do to tie it to the workplace. All right, let's move on to test taking number 3, which is give information that answers the question. Answer the question. A lot of our students give a great answer with correct grammar. It's a great answer because there's good grammar and great pronunciation, but it didn't answer the question. So we're going to listen, right? And I tell my students, listen for what? Who you are. Yes. Listen for what? What you need to say. Absolutely. And depending on where your students are, you could use this as an opportunity to talk more about the picture or just go ahead and play it for them and see what happens. I typically will ask my students, where are they? Who are they? Just to get them on the same page, right? So I'll show them the strategies and let's listen.
Now you will hear a different type of question. You will pretend to be a person in a picture. Look at sample 2. Pretend that you are the woman. You want to know the price of the fish. What do you ask? Press the record button.
What do you ask? What do you need to know? You may need to play this again for the students. It just depends, right, on your group. But after you've gotten some answers from the students, show them some sample answers and show them this incorrect answer. How many pounds is the fish? A lot of our students will answer this and ask them, why is that incorrect? Turn to their partner, think, pair, and share. Have them put it into the chat. Have them jump into breakout rooms and discuss why that's incorrect and what are some other good answers. But yeah, tell the students, right? You have to pretend to be a person in this picture and you want to know the price of the fish, not the weight. And how many pounds is it? Great sentence, but does not answer the question. So show the students they will lose points if they don't answer the question correctly. Also note that a lot of these answers are not very long, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Test taking tip number 4. Do not spend too much time on any one question. Of course, there's going to be some that are going to be a little bit longer, especially if they're asked to describe a process of how to do something. But for the most part, we got to remind our students, you got 25 minutes and you got 21 items. The other aspect we want to tell our students is that yes, you can record more than one time. If you didn't like what you said the first time, you can re-record. But we need to tell our students they do not get any extra time to re-record. And a lot of our students, especially our more advanced students, they want it to be perfect and they think that's what's most important and they're not realizing, oh, I have many more questions to get through. So that's why this time management piece is so key. By the way, this is Form C and D, and you can listen to this in our resources. And here are some sample answers. Again, these are things that you can use in our class. In your classes, we have many, many, many more slides like this that you can use in your classrooms. Again, workplace skill, right? We got a cashier, right? How do you respond to customer inquiries? Formal tone, politeness, so many things. Want more role play? Like I said, we got lots more, right? And they're organized by level, and you can start using these in your classes today, tomorrow, next week. Moving on. Test taking tip number 5. Be ready to describe a picture of an everyday situation. This is not a role play, right? This is where we want students to know how important it is to listen to those directions and to know what they need to answer. Now, you can still teach your students to look and listen, right? Who do you see? What do you see in the picture? Especially if it's the first time you're teaching it. Uh, and these pictures are from the A-B forms. The CD forms, the pictures are a little bit better, and they do make some of these pictures less of a guessing game because that's kind of hard to see that's a vase for a lot of students. Let's listen. Oh, but before we listen, well, actually, let's listen. Yeah, let's listen.
Here are 2 pictures. They show what Nathan did yesterday. Let's look at picture C first and describe what happened. What happened? Nathan broke a vase in his home. Next, describe what happened in picture D. Use a complete sentence.
So now this is for teacher training purposes only.
Here are 2 pictures.
I want you to think to yourself, which is the best answer? A, he is fixing the vase. B, he glued the piece of the vase. And C, he repairs the vase. So the correct answer would be B. And I'm seeing here there's a small typo. It should say he glued the pieces of the vase. But our point is there's 3 different verb tenses there. And you need to use the same verb tense as the question or instructions that you heard. So if they talked about that picture A in simple past and they asked you what happened, then you need to do the same in your response. So I do play it again for our students, especially the more advanced students, and you can play again, ask them to listen for the verb tense.
Here are 2 pictures. They show what Nathan did
That Nathan did. And when?
yesterday.
Yesterday. You can also show them the transcript and have them notice all those simple past verbs. Did, happened, broke. And what's most important is the question or the instruction of what they need to produce. Describe what happened, not what's happening, not what will happen, what happened. So you can see here, they will get partial credit for something like he is fixing the vase. He fixes the vase. The student will get full credit for he fixed the vase or Nathan glued the pieces. There we got the plural, pieces of the vase. So verb tense does matter. All right, this is another question. Again, a description question. This is from the CD form. What verb tense do you hear? Here are 2 pictures. The pictures show you what Fred does to get ready to go on a trip. Look at both pictures now. You will hear what Fred does in picture A. Then you will say what Fred does in picture B. First, look at picture A. The answer for picture A is he packs his suitcase. Now, look at picture B. What does Fred do next? You should use a complete sentence in your answer. So what verb tense do you hear in that? Simple present. And you can play again. You can pause right after those verbs so the students hear it. Show them some sample answers. Ask the students, why did those first two only get partial credit? Think, pair, share. And then, of course, explain to them that those were the incorrect verb tenses. You need to answer with the same verb tense as the instructions or the question. All right, TABE test. Taking tip number 7 for speaking. I mentioned earlier shorter answers. You usually only need about 1 sentence per picture. Now, that could change if they're being asked to give directions using a map of a building or map of a downtown area. But when you see 2, 3, 4 pictures, typically it's 1 sentence per picture. Here, we see how many pictures? 3. Let's listen.
Now you will hear a different type of question. Here are 3 pictures. The pictures show you what Joe does when he goes to visit his family. Look at all the pictures now. You will say what Joe is doing.
You can play this obviously in your class, the full length of it, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a snippet. This is also on the TABE online resources for the forms A and B. But what does he do first? Well, he waits for the bus. And I usually ask my students, is that a long sentence or a short sentence? Yeah, it's a short sentence. How many words in that sentence? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it needs to be a complete sentence. And even with my level 5 students, I say, what's the subject? That's right, he. What's the verb? Waits. And what do we need next? Object or more information, the bus. Also, notice they only have to address one image. And then they're going to go to next and listen, and it's going to say, what does he do next? I'm not going to play it. You can hear it when you do this using the resources. But what does he do next? And this is a great opportunity to have students share with each other, share in the chat, and he rides the bus. And again, grammar, reinforce those full sentences because they do get points for correct grammar. If they have grammar mistake, they do lose points. We need them to answer the question, yes, but we also need them to use proper grammar. And finally, you can see here he meets his family at the bus station. Now, this is a speaking test, so please encourage your students to speak slowly and clearly and model it for them. He meets his family at the bus station. He meets his family at the bus station. Great opportunity to teach sentence stress, right? Look for those verbs. He meets, right? Look for those nouns. His family at the bus station. Really encourage your students to speak slowly and clearly. All right, we went from 3 pictures. Now we're going to 4. Look at these 2 sets of pictures. And what do you think they have to do here? Right, we got an A, B, C, D, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, this is our next test-taking tip. Be ready to explain how to do something. Yes. And what I tell my students for my next test-taking tip is look for important verbs and nouns. And the first time we do this, we do it together, of course. I tell my students, let's look at those pictures. What nouns do you see? This is perfect for online class. They can put it in the chat. What verbs do you see? If you're teaching an in-person class, I mean, you can use a word cloud, Microsoft Form. You can have them use mini whiteboards. So many things to make it interesting for our students. So we start with verbs, start with nouns, whatever you like. I give them an example. And I tell them I'm looking for base form verbs. And if your students don't know that, well, you can teach them. And we create a list of words on the board, or on your virtual whiteboard. And speaking of workforce contextualization, giving instructions is a workplace skill. Training others, explaining a resolution process to a customer. If you work in a restaurant, this is not only is this a skill you need to know, but you might need to teach others how to do it, how to make coffee, work in an office if you're an office assistant. So definitely workforce contextualization happening here. Now, please keep in mind this is for instructional purposes that we're expanding on the workplace contextualization, that we're brainstorming a list of nouns and verbs on these students' tests. They're not going to have time for all that. We're just training them right now, right? We're scaffolding it, and then we're going to be removing the scaffolding as we give them more practice. Right? Do the same thing with nouns. Give them an example, right? And now we have our list that we've created on the board. And now it's time for students to take those verbs, take those nouns, and create a sentence for each picture. And I tell my students, how many pictures? 4 pictures. So how many sentences? 4 sentences. Yes. Now, depending on the level of your students, like my students, level 5, I send them off to breakout rooms or into small groups to go ahead and see if they can figure this out on their own without modeling it first, because I teach level 5. Lower level students, keep going to the next slides and you can model each step for them, and then use other examples, right, to give students an opportunity to practice because we have more examples for you in the resources. But again, collaboration here, right? The students are working together to create these steps. They're discussing the best vocabulary, the best verbs to use, and collaboration in groups and teams is also a workforce skill. So make sure that's in your lesson plan. So whether you have them do this first on their own, and then you show them the answer, or you model it, here you go. Play it for them. I'll play it for you.
Now you will hear a different type of question. Here are 4 pictures. The pictures show you how to make a pot of coffee. Look at all the pictures now. You will say the instructions for each of the pictures. Look at picture A. What do you do first?
So again, just like the bus question, we're only looking at one picture and giving answer for that particular picture. And then we're going to go to the next question. Do draw attention to the A, B, C, D. Students need to know to go from left to right, not up, down. We want to make sure that they're seeing the correct order. After you ask for some answers from students, go ahead and show them some answers. If you need to teach them about transition words, please do so. If you want to teach them about imperative verbs, if they want to use a subject and say first I pour or first you should pour, if you want to use modals, depending on what grammar you're teaching that week, right? This is a way for you to reinforce that grammar. And they're going to listen again and they're going to give you their answers or answers to their partners, right? This might be a good opportunity as well to show students that you can use the imperative or you could use a subject, right? You could say, third, I press the start button, or stick with the imperative, right? Third, press the start button. And finally, pour the coffee into the cup. Again, short answers, 1 sentence per picture. Now we got other examples of some how to make a sandwich, how to do laundry. You'll see that on the resources that we have on our team. So we have one more tip to go, but it might be a good time right now to pause the video and think about Take some notes perhaps on something that you've seen so far today, that you've heard so far today, that you think you can use in your classes. Or maybe it has spawned an idea in your head. So feel free to pause the video and do that. I'm going to keep going though, for the sake of time. All right. Our last test taking tip is be ready to say numbers, including big ones. And we need to train our students to speak slowly. Now, this is a level 1 question, but I do this with my level 5 students. I know level 6 teachers that do this with their students, and you'd be surprised at different answers. So start with the level 1 questions, no matter what level you teach. More practice, the better, right? Let's listen.
Look at the picture. How many cough drops are in the bag?
Ask students for their answers. Here are some great answers that got full points. Now, teacher note, for these quantitative literacy questions, complete sentences are not typically needed to receive full credit. It's a situation where I, as teach my students to use full sentences all the time, but unless it says use a complete sentence, students can say 80 and they'll get their full points. Here's a question on the new C&D form. Let's listen.
What is the time on the clock?
Sample answers. Ask your students what they think about it. Compare answers. Getting into some bigger numbers now.
Look at the picture. How much does it cost to rent the house?
Ask students to give answers. Show them some incorrect partial credit and correct answers, and discuss why they're incorrect or why we're only getting partial credit and why that last one is correct. Now, we have embedded in the PowerPoint slides that we have provided for you, these ones and others, some tools you can use to help teach numbers. This is one of them. This is an instruction slide only. The students are not going to see all this on the test. This is from EnglishClub.com. Great resource. You'll find more information there. Use this at your discretion. We have another folder just with resources with numbers that you can use with your students. We also have embedded these links into the teacher PowerPoint so that you can use these depending on your time in class, depending on your topic, and depending on your level. Just click on them when you're opening the PowerPoint and use whatever resources are best for your students. Scoring. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not involved in scoring, but we do have access to the scoring guides. And you can see here grammar, meaning, appropriateness. Depending on the question, will depend on exactly what they're being graded on. This is an overview of what that looks like. But we also have the full scoring guide available to you. We also have, for you as a teacher, you should go to this site so you can see the test interface, but also show your students and have your students practice using this site, which is from the test maker and for Form C and D. So some extra practice now. All right, let's take a breath. I'm going to drink some water. We're about 2/3 of the way through here. We're going to transition from speaking and we're going to head over to writing. We have other resources just for writing. We have a whole separate PowerPoint slides. We have class kicks and other resources just for writing. All the slides you're going to see here, we have and more, and they're organized by level. But for the sake of time, we're just going to take a look at what the level 2 resources look like because they're going to mimic what you'll see for level 1, 3, and 4. Again, teach your students the curriculum that we have. Make sure your lessons are contextualized to the workplace. So I usually start with my students with multiple choice because they hear writing, it's a writing test, but there is multiple choice. There's grammar. Absolutely. So treat this like any other question that you would do in class, right? Use your own teaching technique on how you get students to the right answer. Do what's best for you. But notice the question types, right? Choose the correct answer. I try to incorporate these question types into my grammar tests, like choose the correct sentence or choose the sentence that's not correct. Lesson contextualization, right? This is forming yes, no questions. You have this already in the curriculum. Using upwards intonation, that's also in the curriculum. Making a request is in the curriculum and a great soft skill. So you can see you're already teaching this, right? We just want to make sure the students are getting practice in a multiple choice format with this particular question format. You can see here what I highlighted in yellow, combine, right? This again is a test type question that you can incorporate into your assignments, into your assessments. Two simple sentences, how do they combine them? What's the correct answer? I'll give you a second. You can pause. Yeah, letter C, absolutely. And this is a great opportunity if you're teaching level 4, compound sentences, making sure the students know the difference between but, so, and or, and because. Because for complex sentences, but we know students get so and because confused. But again, lesson contextualization, compound sentences, coordinating conjunctions, right? You could use that word move. How else can you use that word move, right? Like move departments, for example. All right, going back to our test taking tips we talked about earlier about time management. I had this slide earlier. I'm bringing it up again because we actually have a small folder for test taking tips that has a PowerPoint that you can share with your students. That would be great for levels 4 and up, possibly level 3, can be adapted for lower levels. This is a question that we use to make sure students know they have to work quickly through the questions, but they got to read the question carefully. Because if they don't, they might miss an important word. What important word do you think they could miss here? You got it. That word not. They could just go right over it and see which of these is an even number, choose A and get the answer incorrect, right? So here are some bullet points that have been created for you to walk your students through the importance of reading carefully, but working quickly through the answers. Teaching students how to eliminate answer choices. Like with my level 5 students, I tell them, hey, pretend you know nothing about this verb tense you see right here. Uh, but then you look at it a little bit more and you're starting to remember that your teacher said something about every day, right? What is every day? Daily routine, absolutely. So daily activities, do we use ing? Nope, we don't use ing. So we can eliminate, remove, get rid of those options. Now, there are more multiple choice questions in the PowerPoint slides that we've provided for you. We've also have created some Microsoft forms with some questions. We have 3 different forms for TABE level 2, 3, and 4. They each have about 25 questions or so. And you can use these in class to help your students see the type of questions that they'll encounter. You can see here we got some quantitative literacy questions right here as well. Now, in addition to multiple choice, there are writing tasks depending on the level, right? Lower levels will have to maybe write a sentence or put information on a form, for example. Here, this is from the CD form, right? They get an example, then they have to write a sentence, type a sentence rather, on their own. As they move up in TABE level, they might have to do 2 sentences. So again, this is opportunity to reinforce proper sentence structure with your students. And we have examples for you too to show your students. So you'll see these on the PowerPoint slides that we have provided for you that you'll find in the Microsoft team. Now, in addition to sentences, students will have to write paragraphs. Now we're getting more higher levels, right? These are students that are in level, perhaps level 3 ESL, maybe level 4 ESL. We have given you an example of what it should look like. And we also have some other resources for you and some other examples that you can use in class. Students also at this level have to write a note, an information note, for example. You can pause this for a moment and read through it so you can have an idea of what this is about. But you can see essentially the students being asked to write a note reminding someone to submit a report. And we want the note to be polite. But what the students are going to see is this. They're going to see some spaces and they have to know to click and what to type in those spaces. So we need to teach our students how to format a note. And I have all of this for you in the writing PowerPoint that you can teach your students. We also have a class kick that you can copy, and it teaches your students how to write a note. They study a note and then they have to write their own note. Now, at the higher levels, they also may need to write something longer, and you'll have to teach them that formatting as well, but you'll see that in the resources. We've also have lists of additional writing practice for students at each level. These are not necessarily TABE writing topics, but these are topics that students at our levels, at each of our levels should know, right? If this is a student at a level 3 or level 4, they should be able to write about these things. And there's probably some overlap with the TABE test. Again, all these resources are available to you, organized by level. That was just level 2. We have it for level 1, 3, and 4. We also have a scoring guide for the writing as well. All right, we are in the final stretch. Where should you start? Okay, where should you start? Well, go to the team, right? Make sure you're a member of the team. Request access if you don't have it already. Look for the start here. Practice questions. Open up the speaking. You're going to find 250 slides organized by level with sample questions, audio, test-taking tips, and links to additional resources. Pick 2 or 3 slides and do them in class tomorrow or next week. You can do it as a warm-up, review a topic you've already done in class, even a wrap-up. Then do the same thing with the writing PowerPoint. 170 slides organized by TABE level, multiple choice, grammar usage, sentence writing prompts with pictures, extended writing prompts, and links to class kicks and other resources. So now it's your turn, right? Take a moment, reflect on your next 2 or 3 action steps that you will take to help support your students. I hope you can see that you're already preparing your students. You're already using the content that the students need on the TABE test. You're using our ventures, using Standout, using our curriculum, using your materials. We just want to make sure the students understand the test, that they have practice with the question types. Now, the resources we have created for you are by no means exhaustive and no means perfect. If you have suggestions or questions, please let me know. My name is Eamon McGowan, and I'm a full-time ESL instructor at Wake Tech, and I'm happy to hear your suggestions and to answer your questions. Thank you for your time, and happy test taking, teaching, happy test taking, tip giving, and good luck to all of your students.